So, hi, my name is Sifuboggie, and welcome to the Way of Conscious Mindfulness, a weekly podcast and YouTube show discussing spirituality and science, balancing health and well-being with mind, body, and spirit, with a Daoist twist, a Daoist flavour. The Dao means the way, the path, the balance. Now, surprise, surprise, we are not the normal show. Each week we either have a subject or a guest, and this week we have a very lovely guest. And our aim is to have an open discussion to help us all find new skills, new techniques to help balance our very own personal Dao way. So, on this great epic journey, as always, I have co-hosts. Now, one doing his ninja thing, great Robbie McKenzie. He will appear and disappear as he does. But while that's going on, just ignore him. He'll just turn up when he does, and when he does, we'll say hello. But also, the other great co-host we have tonight is the awesome, the wonderful, the very good at asking questions. It is the questioner, aka Chris Clutton. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening. Hello.
Right, awesome. So, okay, now a few or sort of apologies. Unfortunately, tonight, the wonderful Mystic Joy and also the wonderful Michelle Infinity's everything, and also Water Academy, Mystic Joy. They're not about tonight. They're off. They're off doing their stuff, their thing. So it's just 2.5 boys and a beautiful lady on the show tonight. So you'll have to, I'm sure you'll be fine. I'm sure you'll be fine, Marilyn. So now this is the show of the Way of Marilyn Devonish. I had to think about that. Now, she does many things. Now, one of the topics that we'll be talking about tonight is neuro success and within body, mind, and spirit. Also, Huna and healing. And she's many things. She's a little bit like myself. She is a Huna practitioner, which we will talk about. She's also a trainer of timeline therapy, as well as EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, and also emo trance practitioner, which I'm very interested in as well. So, good evening, Marilyn. How are you doing?
Good evening, Sifu. I am fabulous, thank you. How are you?
I am also. I love the way you say Sifu as well. It's very cool. I like that. Thank you. Yes, I will actually say, because I know Chris has sent a little message. Can you just tone down your volume just a little bit? It's because I got a very exuberant tone to my voice. Cool. And yeah, we was getting a little bit of feedback. Or actually, Chris was suffering with the feedback. It doesn't bother me, but and we wouldn't, So anyway, good evening and welcome. I'm a little bit excited tonight. I'm looking forward to these subjects, so that's probably why. So right, I'll ask my easy but for sometimes very confusing question. So Marilyn, what is your Dao? What is your way?
I think if I were to kind of sum up one of the things that have it has been the hallmark of my personal development journey, and for me, if I were to summarize it, it's wherever you go, there you are. Because I used to spend a lot of time before I got into personal development changing jobs, having terrible bosses, having fallouts with friends and all that sort of stuff. So I would think, right, if I just go to a new job, and if I just go to and get some new friends, and if I just do this and I just do that, my life would change. And suddenly it dawned on me that wherever you go, there you are. And so therefore, if I want to be happy where I am, I need to sort out myself because there's no getting away from me. And I think that was probably the catalyst for much of the work that I do now, in terms of it's not necessarily about your external situation. It's not about your circumstance. It's not where you happen to reside, because, you know, giving it all up to go and live by the beach. If you're miserable in Brighton and Blackpool, London, the chances are once the honeymoon period has worn off, you're also going to be miserable in Bali, Thailand, the Caribbean. So for me, I think that's one of the ideas that popped into my head many years ago. And it's one that I remind myself often if I feel that I'm getting overwhelmed by external circumstances.
That's very cool. And yeah, it's also, it doesn't matter. That's also applied to who you're with, and what you're doing as well, isn't it? Is that, you know, you could be with Prince Charming or Princess Charming. You could have all the wealth in the world, but if you're not internally happy, if you're not settled within, then it's irrelevant.
Yeah, and for me, that gave me a sense of, number one, of slightly oh crap, because it's like, oh my God, you know, I'm always with myself, so I better sort this out. But then it was also that wonderful sense of, I don't have to be buffered continuously and solely by external circumstances, you know, so I could then know that once I do get that sorted out, I could be peaceful, calm, balanced, happy, joyful, whatever it is, wherever I am. And for me, that was like the other flip side of oh crap was brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's just a few weeks ago, I think one of my martial brothers and friends said is about me with, I have no inhibitions, you know, like I could be in the middle of Bracknell at a train station waiting to get picked up, and I'll start doing Qigong, you know, and you know, where other people, you know, would all, you know, looking funny, and it's like, I don't care, because I'm happy with me. I'm quite simply put, I'm happy who I am. So it doesn't actually really bother me what other people think, because I'm the only person, and I don't always think people really get it, is, you know, the only person that really matters is you. You know, you should be happy with you, and you should love you, and you should, you know, you should be happy in your own company. And I think that's where people are lost, or that's where people go off in these, you know, either addictions or epic rampages, you know, trying to do different stuff because they're not happy inside. One of my Sifus would say, home is you. Is you need to find the Tao, you need to find home inside you. You know, you need to go, I'm at home, you know, need to find that peace within yourself. And I think for a lot of people, that's probably the toughest thing they'll ever do, is looking for peace within themselves. But anyway, what do I know? Chris, have you got any questions?
Yes. Where did you get that awesome answer from?
Where? It's a place, I think, hold on, let me put a bit of light on here. It's a place, I think, where I get all of my awesome answers from. And the question is posed. I go inside. I'm trying to describe now how it happens. And then once I've gone inside, if you could see it, it's like the top of the head will open up and it's like, okay, give me the information. What is this? And I almost call it a divine download, because often when I'm running trainings, I will say something and people go, oh my God, that's good. And I like, that was brilliant. I hope somebody wrote it down, because it comes, you go inside, you hear it, you ponder it, you then have a bit of a download, and then it comes out. And sometimes you stand back in amazement and go, that is good stuff. So the answer just popped into my head and I was like, that sounds about reasonable. I think that's how I live my life. So short in technical, I just made it up. But I think it, you know, it's like actually, that is kind of what I do believe and perceive about life.
So you will go in with the flow.
Yes, going with the flow. That's a perfect way to put it, because that's what I talk about in photo reading and accelerated learning. When you're in flow, it's almost like the collective consciousness that Jung talked about. It's almost like you're tapped into that. And just the most amazing, gorgeous, wonderful stuff just shows up. So I like that, going with the flow, yes.
You know what, Chris? I think you are the questioner. I think I've just found the answer. Awesome. Right. Okay.
Does
So
this mean the universe is about to wobble?
yeah. You know, it's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. And Baz will be telling me off because I'm singing again.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah, I will. Right. So, Marilyn, I'm going to ask a question, and the question is, what is Huna? What is a Huna practitioner?
Now, Huna is, I do a lot of crazy stuff. I'm a trainer and practitioner in probably about 20 different modalities, probably a few more. And there are a couple that I say are quite out there. And Huna for me is one of the most out there ones that I do. So it's a ancient Hawaiian healing system methodology. I suppose it's closest in Western terms, in terms of how we think about these things. Its closest relative would be Reiki, in that it uses symbols and works with energy transmission. And Huna is pretty much the kind of philosophy of the ancient Hawaiians, and it's their spiritual practice, and it's a practice about self-empowerment. And it's one of my favorites because it's the one that I use with my clients remotely. I could do a Huna session with somebody in Australia, and even if they have no idea I'm doing some work with them, they will feel it, and they will be on the phone or on the email going, "What did you do on Tuesday? Did you do some Huna?" And I'm like, "Why do you say that?" And they'll go, "Because I felt this and I felt that." It's just crazy. And I first came across it when I did my NLP training, and I was in a very stuck place. And the guy who was running the training said, wanted to volunteer. And I must admit, I volunteered to be facetious, because at that point, I had thought I'd been duped into the training, so I was angling to get a refund. And so my mission was to prove, this is seriously, my mission was to prove that all of this personal development stuff was a load of old nonsense. I mean, timeline therapy, Huna, hypnosis, NLP, what a load of rubbish. And so I'm angling for a refund, so I volunteered. And he did some Huna. Well, he didn't appear to do anything. He just carried on teaching the class. And this went on for about an hour, and every 15 or 20 minutes, he'd look at me and go, "How do you feel about that situation now?" The thing he was going to Huna. And I was like, "You haven't done anything, dude. I feel exactly the same." And this went on 3 or 4 times. And at the end of that hour, he turned to me and he said again, "How do you feel about that situation now?" And I was just about to launch into one in terms of, "You haven't done anything." And I thought, I actually feel different. And then I reasoned it was because he's made me think about it for an hour, so I'm desensitized. But in terms of the relationship that he was working on with me, the dynamic of that relationship changed dramatically in a period of 4 or 5 hours, to the point where this person who never used to ring me, the onus was always on me to do all of the work. I went home, there was an answer phone message from them, which was just crazy. And I thought, who died? Because they never get in touch. And I was just like, I can't explain what happened. He didn't do anything. And now there's a silent version of Huna, and there's what I call the bells and whistles noisy version. So the bells and whistles noisy version, you basically draw the symbols on the breath and you deliver them on the breath. So it would sound and look a bit like, that's the bells and whistles version. But the silent version is an energy transmission to someone to help them resolve stuck emotions, to help them connect to their higher self, to help to, either energize the body or calm the body down, depending on which of the elements you're working with, because it works with 5 elements. It was just the craziest thing, and I could not explain. I thought, right, he didn't do anything to me. Technically, he didn't do anything to the other person who knows nothing about what's going on, yet our whole relationship changed in just a few hours. And that sowed the seed for me kind of going, what the hell is this? And so it took many years, probably 5 or 6 years later, I decided to go over to Hawaii and study Huna, because I thought we're better to learn about the ancient Hawaiian practice than in Hawaii. But it's just amazing. It's an energy transmission technique. It works with the elements. The Hawaiians are very much about connecting to the power of the earth. So they worship the sun and the earth and the water and the moon and the stars and the volcanoes, fire, water, all of that sort of stuff. And for them, the whole practice centers around something called, well, for them, everything is about the heart, the breath. And one of the things the Hawaiians figured out is the difference between someone who's alive and someone who's not, is that the person who's not alive anymore is no longer breathing. And so their practice centers around the breath. And that is why the symbols are delivered on the breath. But it's their spiritual practice, it's their empowerment practice. And many people have heard of a little tiny slither of Huna, which is Ho'oponopono, what is called the forgiveness process. And that's just one page in the massive book of Huna, but it's one of my favorite modalities, and it's the one that I think packs the biggest punch with my clients, whether I'm doing it in person, remotely, or on a teleseminar or on a video. So that is my kind of longish answer to why I love it.
No, that's awesome. You know, it's I went to Hawaii in 2001, and there was one of the staff members that had hurt their back or something, and I did my healing. Now I was already doing Reiki. Reiki itself originated from Japan, but it came to the West via Hawaii and Mrs. Takata. And the funny thing is, it's like when people talk about Reiki, is that, well, yeah, Hawaii already had their version. In China, there's a version called Shunqi Shen, or different variations of Shunqi Shen, which means flowing energy spirit. And I was doing this Shunqi Shen, and which is one of the sort of methods is, and the person said, "Are you doing Huna?" And it's, what's that? And then she introduced me to one of, like, a master of her, and we went through this stuff, and it was funny how it was different but similar. So there were these, you know, and we sort of, like, you know, just exchanged a few little, like, healing sessions, and it was the first time that I actually came across Ho'oponopono. But again, there are similar mantras and clearing mantras within, because my Chinese stuff. So there's the similar one in that, or quite a few of these clearing techniques. And it was the philosophy of Huna as well, because it's there, but also it comes from in here. So it's that, you know, you clear in here and you can help out there, and that whole thing of, you know, just by working on you're feeling the energy of you know, yourself and that other person, or the energy of the client, and you work on the energy of them rather than on the person directly, or at least that was my understanding from this master who taught me, well, didn't teach me, but showed me some of the stuff, and he called me Kanu, if I remember rightly. Kanu, which is master man, or master in Hawaiian. So I was Kanu Boggie. So, but it's all good. So yeah, Chris, have you a question?
Whew, time to recover.
And breathe.
So Huna, is it sort of similar to Reiki in that it has, like, levels, or is it just something you're taught and then you have empowerments or that sort of come in weekly, or is it just how do you go about learning Huna?
That is a brilliant question, and yes, it does have levels. So Huna, and the way they have structured the training in terms of the company that I trained with, you have to have a minimum of 6 months between the levels. So they only run it twice a year. And so you've got level 1, which very similar, because Reiki was one of the first things that I did probably 20 or so years ago. A bit like Reiki, level 1 is for use on self. So it's all about learning to use Huna for yourself. Yeah, you can have practices, but you're doing that just to get the energy flowing. Level 2 is where you then have a bigger sense of attunement. So in level 1, you get attuned into 4 of the symbols. Level 2, you go back, you get another, I think it's another 10 or 12 symbols, and there's a big, you know, initiation ceremony with the tiki torches going and the drumming in the background and the Hawaiian chanting, and it's all done at night. It's very symbolic. It was just amazing. And then level 3 is where you go back, you get further attunements, and you get initiated in what you call your Huna guides. They're called the Avaiku. And you don't choose the Avaiku, the Huna guides. That's part of the initiation process for level 2. And your guides will choose you. So part of this initiation ceremony is you get initiated into your Huna guides, and you can have 1, you can have 1,000. And so part of that is you get to know your guides, because you will work with your guides. When I'm working with my clients remotely, I'm calling on the Avaiku to work with me, so I'm not trying to do it all myself. And then after you've done level 3, you can then go back several times, and then you're almost learning to be a teacher of Huna, where you're supporting the level 1, 2 and 3 students that come into the process. But that first level is very much about to get to know yourself, and it's a bit of a personal development training. And then level 2 is where you get into what I call the good stuff, where you start getting initiated into it. And it's a 14-day training, so a 2-week training, and each level is 2 weeks.
Wow. Yeah, I think I've got to go back for that now. Yeah. So no, well, you're another guest like myself who's very enthusiastic. It's oozing out of you, your enthusiasm. So yeah, or at least with me, it's going, yeah, I think I need to go and do that now. Add another string to my many bows. Okay, right. Well, I've got an interesting question. So I've studied. Okay, so I've studied NLP. Now, are you just a practitioner, or are you higher than a practitioner in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming? For those who don't know what NLP is, are you higher than?
If you're putting it like that, yeah, I did practitioner, I've done master practitioner, and I've done trainers training. So I have run trainings where I've then certified other people to become practitioners and master practitioners. The next level after trainer of NLP is a master trainer. I didn't feel I needed to go there. I'm happy being a trainer, but yeah, so in terms of practitioner is the first level, master practitioner is the second level, a trainer of NLP is the third level, and that's the level that I've studied to.
Right, the reason I brought it up was because of my next follow-up, or when I started doing it, they said, to be honest, Boggie, knowing what you do, look, the higher you go up in NLP, the more spiritual or energetic it becomes. So they were sort of saying, don't really think you need it. But if you want to do it, pursue. But would that be right for you? Do you feel that it becomes, depends what you mean by spiritual, but does it become more energetic? Does it become more like, for example, Huna? You sort of get in my drift?
That's an interesting one. One of the reasons I became a trainer of NLP, because I was studying to be a chartered accountant of all things. When I did my NLP training, I just did it because I was very quiet and shy, and I wanted to improve my communication skills. So I had no plans to follow that path whatsoever. So one of the reasons I did trainers training, I was offered a job by the company that I trained with. And so I was just being a bit nosy, actually. I thought, if I'm going to be a coach, an NLP coach, I better know what trainers do. So it might have been the mindset with which I approached it. I approached it with quite an analytical mindset. I want to understand what goes into being a trainer. I want to understand how to transmute this information to other people so that they can become amazing practitioners and master practitioners. So I didn't necessarily look at it in the way you're describing. However, what did happen, of course, and I haven't got it here, it's back in my other room, but I did a Facebook Live video a couple of days ago where I was saying the more I learned, the more I realized, and I've got an encyclopedia of NLP, I kid you not, it's that thick, and there are 2 volumes. And so for me, it opened, whereas when I did prac, I thought, I know NLP, and then suddenly I do master prac, and I'm still thinking I know NLP, and then I did trainers training, I was like, oh my God, I am scratching the surface here. So I think for me, it wasn't necessarily getting more spiritual. It opened me up to recognizing that sometimes the more you think you know, the less you know, because you then become aware of how much more there is to know. So I think that was my overarching impression of it.
Mm. Yeah, I'll use for our podcast viewers. This will not make any sense whatsoever because it's a visual thing. But it's a little joke I did with Michelle is that you start off in NLP or in Daoism or in Huna or any of these. You start off with here. The more it grows, the more you know, and before you know, you've got a whole page, but then you realise actually there's a whole book to go with that. And that's the point of the universe is technically the more is one thing that is said in Lao Tzu or Lao Tzu's, which is the Tao Te Ching, which is it's eventually becomes 10,000 things that you can just more expand and expand and expand. And the point is it's there to learn, it's there to grow, and it's there to have fun with it. But the point is you can never, you know, that ego will make you think, oh, I know everything, and then you get to the next step and actually it's suddenly doubled or trebled or more. So it's all very cool. Right, Chris.
I am just going rack round to Huna. So when you were on this 14-day course, right, was that like a diet on that as well to go with that? Or was that just, you know, you ate whatever you wanted? Did that add to the spirituality of it?
Well, much as I would like to tell you, we were eating from the land and washing our food in the sea. We were at a lovely swanky hotel in Hawaii. And so you're now don't get me wrong, the food in Hawaii was incredible. Everything fresh, you know, the fruit bar is like you've never seen in your life. However, next to the fruit bar is the rice and the chicken and all the rest of it for breakfast, which for me was quite an unusual thing. So it was a case of, depending on what kind of journey you wanted to have, you would choose, do you go and eat from the fruit bar, or do you go over to the table of Chinese and have Chinese for breakfast? So there wasn't a prescribed diet. It was, what do you want to get? Now, one of the things that was part of it, and the first time I went, it was just bonkers, because you could do morning meditation at something like 5:30 a.m. Then there was drumming class. Then there was Hawaiian dancing class, then there was chanting class, and then the main class of the day starts at midday and runs through to 8 p.m. And because I was so excited, I did everything. So my days in Hawaii started at 5 a.m. and went through till probably midnight, because when you do some of the initiations, it's full on. So it wasn't so much about the food, but it was very much about the other physical and spiritual practices that you can open yourself up to. So I did them all, and the chanting was particularly impactful, because there's something about those words that when you, number one, when you say the words, but when you've got a group of people around you saying those words, it kind of resonates to the core of your soul. So I think I ate what I wanted, because I love food, let's not even go there. But in terms of the spiritual practice, that was more of the kind of wow experience for me. And feel free to keep asking about Huna, because I know it's one of those subjects that can keep on going, so I don't mind.
I don't know, it's cool. It's just something that popped in my head. I know what you mean about sound. There's something about, I've talked about this before, so I'm going to keep it short, but there's something about sound where you get a group of people together and they could be singing happy, 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 or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. The song without words, as I think of it. And there's that connection. It's not like they're touching like that. There's some other connection that happens, and it's amazing. And I don't know how to describe it better than that, but I love it. I think there should be more singing in the streets, let's say that.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things that blew everyone away, it's certainly the thing that dominated my level one, was strangely the Hawaiian dancing, because you're learning some of these moves and then they go with, so you're learning Hawaiian songs, you're learning to do the dances, because what I didn't know at the beginning was there's a luau at the end of the 14 days. We were the entertainment. I didn't know that. So we were going to be doing this, you know, ho'opuka ekana ma kaikina, hey, and you're learning all these dances and you're learning the songs. And my God, when you perform them, it's just beyond. It's I can't, like you said, I can't put it into words. And I think, you know, I've been prescribing what I call dance breaks for my clients for the last 17 years. And now on Facebook in hashtag world, it's hashtag dance break. But I'm always talking to people about the power of dance and the power of music. And I don't care whether you're listening to Motorhead or Motown, whatever it is that floats your boat, music and dance has a neurological impact that goes way beyond, that's a cool song. And so I totally know what you mean about, I sing and dance to anything and everything. I'll be singing in the supermarket. I'll be dancing in the supermarket because they're playing a track that I really like. And I, like you, I don't really care. It's like, let's not waste good music.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, there's, in fact, I think one of the first times I had this conversation was in Hawaii with this Kanu, this master of Huna. And I was always taught that movement, everything is energy, everything is vibration. And, you know, I studied quantum physics and went into the whole vibratory thing, or sound, but also movement. But when I was taught on the Daoist side, on the Chinese side, that when you're doing the exercises, the Qigongs, they're no different to dancing or dance move. And what I mean by that is those moves are just like symbols, just like the symbols in Reiki and Huna, is that when you're doing those movements, you're flowing your energy, your vibration in a certain way. And very much with this Kanu, this master of Huna, was very much this. In the Chinese, they talk about 3 ones. They talk about physical action, emotional, physical, emotional, and spiritual, or intentional, inspirational. And so when you're doing a movement and you've got an intention in it, you've got feeling in it, and you've got physical action, when all 3 are balanced. And I think that was, the why that, they would get you to do dance and have the music and the words, as well as the energy, the inspiration as well. Your body is tuning in to those frequencies. Your body, the moves you're doing, I sort of say this in Qigong, is that the moves you're doing are a symbol. When you're doing a certain Qigong, it is actually a symbol. It is tuning in, or you become like a tuning fork. You hit the tuning fork and you are tuning in to that frequency, to that energy. And I think that was what I saw out there was them doing exactly, and what you've described is exactly the same thing. It's not just an energy, it's not just a sound, it's not just a feeling, it's all of the above. Are wrapped in with the drums. Drums are very much the heart energy, and also the music as well. And Hawaii is the home of dragons. It's very much the dragon energy, and dragons are very expressive and very much about flowing that. For me, that makes perfect sense. Everything you described is how you would power somebody. And interestingly enough, the original Japanese version is far more similar to that than some of the versions that Western styles have become. You do an attunement and boom, and then that's it, and then you do another attunement a little bit later. The original versions were, you either went every week or like you spent 2 weeks learning it, and it was far more tribal. It's far more progression within it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And for me, a couple of people said, oh, well, couldn't you have studied Huna somewhere else? I'm like, let me get this straight. No offense to Bognor Regis, but if you're asking me, do I want to study Huna in Bognor, or do I want to go to Hawaii and stand on the sacred ground and do some of those initiations to the gods? Let me think about this for a moment.
The Regis wins every time.
So I was just like, no, I really, what I want to do is I want to go to the heart of it. I want to go where it originated. I want to go to where it started. I want to go to where it originated. I want to go to where it started. I want to be at the heart of it, and I want to feel everything that it has to offer. And I think for me, just stepping into Hawaii, it felt very welcoming. I've never been to that part of the world before, and it felt like I was coming home. I know that's a weird thing to say, and given I've never been there, I don't know anyone from Hawaii. But there was just something about the resonance of it. And I think it's going to sound like a weird comparison, but one of the times I felt that rush that you were talking about with the movement, the dance, the energy, was when I went to see Bon Jovi live. I cannot, seriously, it was just a vast expanse of people all singing and dancing to the same song. Now, John Bon Jovi is a little bit hot. I quite like him. So but that aside, and I took a friend who wasn't interested. She's not a rock chick, not interested in Bon Jovi. She only went because I said, look, I've got a ticket, come with me. She looked at me and said, I want to be his groupie. And that was, I couldn't believe that she'd said that, but there was something about it. It was just like that tribal thing. And I just remember there was a moment where I looked around me and there was a sea of people, and I think we're all singing Keep the Faith. And I was like, this is freaking magic.
Yeah. Well, think of the words as well of that song. Think of, you're with people who love the music, love obviously Bon Jovi, in one form or another. The fact you don't, yeah, it's but that's as spiritual as I'm concerned. It's a different flavour, but there's, this is the point, or this is one of the things. Fred, which is he teaches remedial therapy, back clicking, what I know is bone setting. I teach him, he teaches me, and when we've talked about teaching him Tai Chi, which is similar to Qigong, he wants to do it to heavy metal. Where, like most people would think, oh, you can't do something spiritual to rock music. Why not? I've seen people do, and it looks pretty cool. I've seen people do, Tai Chi and Qigong to heavy metal or classical or something else. And it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's activating your passion. That's a big, I've always grown up on, is this: we are all different and we all have different flavors, but you can find spiritual connection in Hawaii learning Huna, or in a Bon Jovi concert singing Keep the Faith. Doesn't matter where it is, it's about opening your heart, mind, body and soul, the three ones, and opening up to something and being yourself. And I think that's that thing of, like, you're similar to me, is that you've either lost or never had that thing, that guard of, in the Western world, oh no, we must be prim and proper, we must, can't do this, you can't do that. And there is a version of that with me in my day job to a degree, but even in my day job, I'm still the weird one. I'm still the slightly odd one, and I'm being really sensible in my day job. But it's this let go and just go with the flow, and that's where your true passion is, and that's where your true power is. And like I say, you say, oh, sound a bit odd about the whole Bon Jovi. Not to me at all. You can have a spiritual moment. You can connect to the universe anywhere and everywhere. It doesn't have to be in a designated area like a church. It doesn't even have to be, in Hawaii. It can be absolutely anywhere. It's all good. Chris?
Absolutely.
So you mentioned something earlier about a personal development journey, and it kind of got me thinking about how technically everybody is on a development journey, whether they believe it or not, because with age, we sort of not become more wise, as it were, but we have a slightly longer view of things, or a different view of things. And I was wondering if you think that's kind of like a spiritual journey for everybody, and some people get it and some people don't. And those people that get it go off and have these amazing experiences, say with Huna or whatever. But eventually everyone should, in theory, have those sort of experiences. And I was just wondering, reflecting back now, would you have ever thought that you were kind of on that journey yourself 20 years ago or 30 years ago?
Absolutely not. Up until, Sifu was just saying, maybe I did a Lady Gaga, as I call it, and I was born that way. I totally wasn't. I was very quiet, very shy, lacking in confidence, very low self-esteem, right up until the age of 32. To the point where I could barely even speak to my own family. I used to talk to people looking down. And the only reason I did that personal development training is I'd opted to be a chartered accountant, because I figured that was a profession where I wouldn't have to speak to people. You could just sit behind the numbers and press a calculator and whatever. And of course, I realized to be a good accountant, you've got to actually talk to your customers. So that was the reason for signing up for that training. And the reason I tried to get a refund is when I got all of the documentation through, because there's some home study, I realized I'd inadvertently signed up to study hypnosis and timeline therapy. And then there was this word called Huna on the letterhead. And I immediately phoned them up and said, this isn't what I signed up for. I have no interest in this. Can I have a refund? And they said no. They did what I now know to be a classic reframe, where they said, well, come to the training. If you don't get value from the training, yada, 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 then we'll give you a refund. And I thought, well, that's just a con now to waste 7 days of my time. But I went along, and I must admit, I was very angry for the first 3 days. I had a face like thunder and would sit in the back, just trying to find questions to catch them out. And then on about day 4, I thought, you know what, I better play full out, as they put it, because they're not going to give me a refund if I just sit sulking at the back. So it kind of found me, I didn't find it. But in terms of that whole thing about the path, now one of the things I do, I'm a soul plan reader. So you look at somebody's birth name and you look at their soul plan. The premise of the soul plan is that you come into the world with worldly challenges, worldly goals, worldly skills and abilities, and also spiritual challenges, goals and abilities. And if you choose to, once you've overcome those worldly talents and you start stepping into your worldly goals, you then step more into the spiritual side of things. That doesn't mean you suddenly become more spiritual. It just means you have wider interests. You are more curious about the world. You start exploring some of the bigger questions. But whether or not everybody is on that path, that I'm not sure about. It could be that, because people often used to say to me, and they say it a lot now, like I'm an old soul, as though I've been here before. So if that, just working on the premise that that might be true, it could be that my soul is like, look, we did the sitting around watching telly in our last lifetime. Now we need to get to it, girl. So I'm not going to let you sit around and be quiet and shy and sit on the sofa. I've got work for you. And so it eventually found me. But it could be, if we talk in terms of old soul, new soul, it could be, let's just say you got a new soul. They might just be here to go, wow, that's cool. Who won the football match? That's great, because that's going to be part of their evolution. And maybe if there's such a thing as coming back from in another life, maybe next time you come back, you go, right, I did that, sat on the beach, I watched telly, Now what I want to do is I want to explore the universe. And so I think of it in that way, that not everyone has an interest or is driven to explore who they are, to find out more about the universe. Sometimes you're more than content to sit and watch TV, hang out with your friends, have a beer, watch football. That's great, because that's the path that you're on. And whether or not that means you're missing out, I don't think so sometimes. I always say to people, look, whatever floats your boat. If that floats your boat, keep on doing it for the rest of your life. Brilliant. But for me, having been awakened, let's say, I was like, man, there's a lot more to this world, and I think I'm here to find out.
Awesome.
I heard something there. Soul plan reader. Okay, what is one of those, and how do you? Well, where do you even go to train?
Chris, are we messing with your head today? Are we messing with your head?
I'm just hearing all these things I've never heard before.
I love it. Keep going, girl. Keep going. I love it. You've got the questioner on the ropes. He's wavering. He looks like it's going to be a knockout. Oh, I'm having so much fun tonight. Right, sorry. So, what is one of those?
Well, again, I had a couple of years ago, I had a hiatus. My brain was like, because I love training, I love courses, I love workshops, I love learning. And there was a point my brain said to me, Marilyn, you have got a number of courses and workshops that you have not actioned, that you've not integrated, and that you have not assimilated into what you do. So until you do that assimilation work, you are not going to another training. And so I had 2 years where I didn't do anything apart from use what I already know. And then the proviso after that time was, if I see something that I think is amazing, either for my own growth and evolution, but ideally for my own growth and for the growth of my clients, then I'm allowed to do the training. And I just went to a little evening talk, and there was a guy there talking about soul plans. Didn't really know what they were, and suddenly I was just like, I need to do this. And so I signed up for the practitioner training. And the soul plan is based on your birth name, your full name on your certificate. So I do this training, I give them my name, which is Marilyn Devonish. I get my soul plan back on the course, and I look at it, and everybody's going, oh my God, this is amazing, this so sums up my life. Oh, and I'm looking at it going, it's like a horoscope. It could fit if I really wanted to make it fit. And we're half a day now into the training, and the guy keeps going on about your birth name, your birth name, your birth name. And eventually, just before lunch, I put my hand up and I said, you keep talking about this birth name. What do you actually mean? And he said, the name on your birth certificate. Now, I don't use the name on my birth certificate. It's not even in my passport. And so I went, oh. And he said, you'll need another soul plan. So they managed to get me one from the office, and it had my middle name in it. I swear to God, when I opened this document, I had no words. It was like looking at the blueprint of my entire life. It talked about challenges with the throat chakra in terms of a lack of expression. One of the things that catapulted me to be more conscious of my health is I developed a thyroid problem, and that was at a time in my life where I was going through some challenges and I did not speak up about those challenges, so I stuffed them all down. And when I did the personal development training, they talked about the mind-body connection, and they were saying for people who have a lack of expression, for people who do not let their feelings out, they sometimes develop a thyroid problem. I was like, oh my God, that's me. So, but everything that was in the soul plan was the entire journey of my life. And it talked about being spiritual. It talked about being a channel. It talked about being a healer. It talked about having multiple spiritual disciplines. But that all kicked in around this age of, because the premise of the soul plan is around about the age of 25, 30. You step more into the spiritual part of your soul plan. And I made that change at age 32. But every single thing that was outlined as those worldly challenges from 0 to 30 were a complete blueprint of my entire life. I was blown away. And that is when I thought, and whenever I take clients through it, they will look at their soul plan, and particularly then when we go through it, normally that by Skype, they will go, oh my God, this is my life laid out on 5 sheets of paper. It's just bonkers, and it's just based on your birth name. There's no date of birth involved. There's nothing about where you were born, what country, which continent. It's like, what is the name on your birth certificate? It's almost a little bit like numerology, and so each letter has a number assigned to it, and you plot it around a Star of David. It's just beyond, seriously, to this day, it still blows my mind when I think about how accurate and spot on it was in terms of the challenges that I went through, the things that showed up in my life, some of the health issues that I had. It was all laid out on this thing called the soul plan. It's just crazy.
I just want to clarify something. You said it's all based around the Star of David.
Yeah. Well, hang on, let me see. I think
Chris.
Let me just see if I
You know what the Star of David is, Chris, don't you?
Right, if I hold that up, I see. You can see that. Let me just see. What can you see? The
Robbie
star
here, I tell you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we can see if the reason we're saying that because the Merkaba in the stuff I do, Merkaba is one of the key things. The Merkaba is the tetrasahedron, which is the tetrasahedron is the Merkaba with a bit of a square around it, and it's 64 pyramids. But the Merkaba is said to be basically the masculine creation of yin and yang, the male and female energy, the yin yang. You have when you actually have a Merkaba and tetrasahedron and in like a wire frame, and
that's perfect timing. Perfect timing. We're just talking about the Merkaba.
Perfect timing. That we were actually talking about what's it called again? I've forgotten.
Star of David.
Chris.
Star of David.
The soul plan.
Soul plan, yes.
Yeah, the soul plan is the soul plan, and the soul plan system works on your birth name, and they use the Star of David.
Nice.
And it basically, yeah. So yeah, the Merkaba for me is a very powerful thing, because the Merkaba is the tetrasahedron in a glass frame. You shine a light through it, and its shadow becomes the flower of life, which is 64 circles, which is in essence the thing behind me. So so for it to be connected to the Merkaba, and this gentleman over here, Robbie meets Marilyn meets Robbie.
Nice to meet you, Marilyn.
Hi, nice to meet you, Robbie. We've been having a rather interesting chat about all sorts of stuff.
Fantastic. Yeah, exciting. So you work with the Merkaba as well, yeah?
Well, and I'm laughing now because the guy who created the soul plan system, he's probably going to go, now, Marilyn, I don't call it that, but pretty much when I looked at that star that we plot the name around, I'm like, that's the Star of David right there.
Exactly.
And it's a way of kind of looking at, what was your soul put on this earth to do, and what are some of the challenges you need to overcome in order to really step into your talents, your skills, and your soul destiny. And that is plotted around what I call the Star of David. So yes.
Perfect.
The reason it's called the reason it's called the Star of David, very quickly, I know I've said it a billion times, so Chris's eyes are going to roll any second. The reason it's called the Star of David is because within the Bible, Saint David was the only saint to ascend to heaven while still alive, and he was picked. It was said that he was picked up by a chariot, a Merkaba, the Merkaba, and that's why the symbol, the Star of David, is said to be this Merkaba, this chariot.
Well, it is a chariot, though. When you activate it, that's exactly what it is. It's a chariot. You explode in love. You actually implode in love. You implode in love because everything is within you. We're all within each other, so it all goes to 1-0 point, you know, and we're all just having a wee experience through our own individual Merkabas. But like you say, that's just one way of talking. And I mean, I think language, you know, isn't sufficient. It's because it's energy. It's energy. When we're explaining the unexplainable, you know, it's like you have to experience it. It has to be experiential, you know. So yeah, we call it. You can call it whatever you want. Call it the star system. Call it call it. You know, call it honorificabilitudinitatis if you want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change what it is. You know, and yeah, that's exactly that. And I think all systems, all religions, all spiritual traditions, I think everything is trying to explain that point and that experience that you have in the heart. No matter the tradition, if it's Jesus or if it's Buddha or if it's whatever it is, Krishna or whatever, it all comes back to that center place. So, you know, it's just different ways of explaining the same thing. And they're all worthy. They're all worthy because one person is not going to, especially upon your filter system, however you've been brought up, however you relate to spirituality or the thought processes or what your parents have told you or what you've been told by your, you know, all your different connections in life. It all boils down to that path. You'll find the right path for you, no matter what you want to call it. You know what I mean? So your system will be just as worthy as a Merkaba system, as a Dranvalo Melchizedek system, as a Krishna. You know, the way that they do the Merkaba in the Hindu tradition, it's a load of different triangles, and it's triangles built upon each other, you know, and that's, to me, I think that's a wonderful way of explaining it as well, because the flower of life is the massive expansion of everything, but it all boils down to that one center point, you know. And they're starting to verify it in science now as well, which is so cool, you know. Carbon-6, you know, the center point of science, saying, because we listen to scientists, people listen to scientists. They listened to scientists when they said the world was flat as well, though. But it's nice for it to be verified now, you know, because people feel that there's a validation if there's a scientific explanation of it, you know. Even though yogis have been saying it for like 6,000 years, you know.
and what, well, very, very quickly, what Robbie's talking about is that the quantum physicists have actually said, like, the fabric of the universe is made from, or they showed this symbol, this pattern, and the pattern is 1/4 of the Star of David. A 3D version, because the Star of David is basically, think of that as a pyramid. So you've got one pyramid pointing up, one pyramid pointing down, put them together, and that is the Star of David, or the 2D is the Star of David, and the flower of life. And the circle is actually that behind us. It actually represents that. So, but anyway, so Marilyn, you got anything to add to that, or you know?
I'm laughing because when Rob was pointing here, that is for me, when you're saying, okay, what's my way? And I said, wherever you go, there you are. One of the things that really made me smile when I first studied Huna, and it's a saying, I add it to all of my trainings, regardless of what I'm training. There's a saying that says, think not that all wisdom is in your school. And what that means is, you might come across this thing and think it's the best thing since sliced bread. Think not that all wisdom is in your school. And that stuck with me. And one of the things I realized, the more stuff I studied, the more I recognized they're pretty much all talking about exactly the same thing. They might have different labels, different language, different symbols, but I look at it and go, yeah, that is that, that is that, that is that, that is that. And there's a whole piece that we do in Huna about correspondences. and you look at everything from the hermetics right through to Reiki. And what we're doing is we're looking for correspondences.
Perfect.
And we're looking for the way that they overlap, and we are looking for the way that we are using different language to talk about the same thing. So
Perfect.
I think that's one of the reasons why I have no interest in getting involved in my system's better than your system. I think that's why I probably know so many modalities, because one size does not fit all, and I am now going to be able to adjust and adapt to the person who's in front of me and speak in their language rather than trying to make them use my system.
Yes, perfect.
Awesome.
You're actually just helping them use their own system in a different way. Them looking at their own system with fresh eyes. That's all that's doing, because it is the same system. It's just using different language. Because we're all come from the same energetic point. It's like saying there's a word for love in every different language, but love means love, no matter whether you're saying je t'aime or amor, or whether no matter what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? You're still talking about love.
Very much so. Indeed. Right. Okay. Now, believe it or not, we've actually pretty much done an hour already. This is what we mean. I know.
For me, that was very quick. That was very quick for me.
Rob, you're in a time warp. You're in a time warp.
The best bit, I've got to say, the best bit I was laughing at when Robbie started was I suddenly realised that Chris has got 3 very excitable, very similar people all bouncing off each other, and Chris has got to somehow down. And I thought that was hilarious. That's why I was laughing away. Because obviously on YouTube you can see it, but on podcast you wouldn't see that. But I was laughing. But anyway, so this is the end of part 1 for podcast world. So I hope you enjoyed it, and please look for part 2. So I would like to, thank you very much for coming. So we talked about Huna, a very, very awesome system. We talked a little bit about what was the other things we talked about?
NLP.
I forgot the name. Yes, NLP, but I was thinking of the thing that started the Star David. My brain's
soul plan
blanked. Soul mapping or soul purposing, which we may continue, because we went off on a tangent a little bit with the Star of David. Well, that's my fault. And we've also talked a little bit about emotional freedom techniques and Reiki. So hope you enjoyed it. See you very, very soon. Take care. Bye for now from Chris. He said bye. From the mighty Robbie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And from goodbye for now from the lovely Marilyn.
Goodbye, and thank you so much for joining us. It was a great conversation.
Indeed it was. So take care. Bye for now. Hope to see you soon. Love, Chi, and Shen from Sifuboggie and the Way of Conscious Mindfulness.
Cheers.
Okay. Mark it. Chris?
And while you do that, I'm just going to put my light on because it's got suddenly very dark here.
No worries. It's all good.
There we go.
Right. Okay. Well, that was awesome so far.
Yeah, well, it really went quickly for me.
Yeah.
You did fast hour. So much to talk about as well.
And I had to laugh, because this is what I sit and look at. So I don't know if you can make that out.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh,
Metatron's
yeah.
Cube.
Oh, wow.
So
Metatron's
that
Cube.
sits on the bureau right in front of me. What you're talking about, I'm like, yeah, I see that every day.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Sacred
geometry.
Yeah, it's back to Robbie's. Well, and that's the seed of life. I think I saw in there as well, didn't I? Is there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
It's kind of Archangel Metatron, but he's holding the Merkaba in the kind of in the center.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the whole kind of,
yeah, the circles are creating the seed of life, and the seed of life, when you spiral all the way round, it creates that. It creates the flower life, which is the flower life is the shadow. The flower life is the mother. The Merkaba is the father, and basically one creates the other. They're both part of the same thing. But anyway, so Chris, are you ready to start off?
I am ready.
Kick off.
Clapperboard.
Right, okay.
That was a makeshift clapperboard pen.
Actually, John Rivers, if you're listening to, you're watching the show, if you're or Kat, remind me, or Chris, remind me, John Rivers, I need a clapperboard. I need if anybody can get one, he would. So
I've got one. I use it on my trainings. It's in a suitcase in my other room at the moment, but I have got one and I take it to my trainings because I use it to signify a clean slate as we let go of our old stuff. So I've had it for about 3 years. I just got it on Google, just typed in Hollywood props, clipperboard, and bang, there they were.
Perfect.
I bet, yeah. So I think we need one. We will get one. Awesome. Right, okay, so starting again in 5, 4. Hi, Sifu Boggie once again. Hey, konnichiwa, ni hao. And welcome to part 2. That's me and Robbie just having a moment. Welcome to part 2. Hey, and welcome to The Way Of Marilyn Devonish. Now, part 1, if you have come straight to part 2, what are you doing, you fool? Go back and listen to part 1. It was awesome. It really was a great show. We talked about things like Huna. We also talked about EFT. We also emotional freedom technique. We also talked a little bit about NLP, Reiki. There was a number of things. Ended up me and Robbie going off on a tangent about Metatron's cube and the Merkaba or Merkaba. Now, so let's kick this baby back into play. Questioner, have you? No, actually, yeah. Questioner, have you a question? Is there anything you want to?
Yes, EMO trance. What is this, and how does it work?
So emo trance is a process of looking at the physicality of emotions. So someone might say, I feel angry or I feel fearful. And in a nutshell, it's saying, okay, where do you feel that in the body? And emo trance, let's just say they feel anger and frustration here in the chest, and it's heavy and it's kind of weighing them down. And with one of the things you do with emo trance is you say, okay, now if that emotion were to find a pathway out of the body, how would it leave? And then you're pretty much guiding the person through a process of allowing the emotion to find its path out of the body. So somebody might say, well, you know, the emotion starts to dissipate and it moves down through the stomach, goes out the bottom of my legs. Somebody else says, well, it starts breaking down and it gets lighter, it gets brighter, and it starts to leave through my throat and goes out the top of my head. So it's basically a way of breaking down the emotions and clearing the energetic system by releasing things from the body and almost seeing the emotions as a physical entity.
So it's a mental technique rather than a physical technique.
Partly, because when you're asking someone, first of all, where is that emotion? How do you feel it in a body? Where does it represent itself? When I use it, I mix it with a bit of what you might call submodalities from NLP in terms of what's the color, the shape, the texture, the size, the pressure of what you're feeling. And then emo trance is about basically softening that energy up and having it find its exit point through the body. And in terms of that bit of the process, some people will feel that, they'll physically feel the emotion leaving. For other people, it's quite a visual process in that they'll see, you know, the red hot anger and suddenly it's getting lighter and it's turning white. So however then somebody wants to move the emotion out of the body, I'll go with whatever their style is. But essentially it's about getting in touch with what are the energy blockages, what are the things that block your physical system, and how can you move those out of the body.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And when you visualize it, you're creating the energy anyway, so you're helping them connect into the energy that's already there in order to clear it. Fantastic. Yeah.
And it's amazing when you say to somebody, what does anger look like? Yeah. You get the most incredible descriptions. And people can't even believe, because when you ask the question, they might look a bit like, are you crazy? Is this what I paid you for? And then as you get into it, the descriptions are so, and they will say things like, and it's, you know, it's hard on the inside, but there are spikes that come out and they pierce my heart. It's just, the descriptions are beyond, and it's stuff that you actually couldn't make up even if you tried to. Yeah, and it's very in the moment, but you're right. It's kind of, it is that thing that when people, that when they get it, they really get it. And then of course, when you've brought it to their attention, they'll feel the difference when it's gone.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
Sifu, go for it.
No, it's really cool. It's like because we said this in part one about you know, when you know, like you have your school and you think, oh yeah, everything is, you know, oh, my school says everything, but all schools say, because the Daoists have, you know, a very similar thing, and there's this big thing in Taoism about being childlike and playing with stuff, and one of the things of like play is, how does something feel when you're talking about emotions, or you know, give it a shape, give it a form, and when I did NLP was like a Western version of Taoism, and you know, like, and that whole thing of when you start making it, when you start actually seeing it, make it in a way tangible, when you actually can express and put words to it, even things that are hard to express, but when you start you sort of give it life, and because you give it life, then you can actually deal with it. And that's what's, you know, obviously with emo is very cool, is this thing of you express it, and by being able to express it, then, and as you said, you know, how will it leave?
You're working out. Yeah.
You'll be your own practitioner in essence.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
you're finding out your way to actually do it yourself, and that's what's so cool.
It is very cool, yeah. You're leading them to their own, because all healing comes from within anyway. There's no such thing as really as a healer. We're just facilitating people's own healing within them. Yeah. So you're just, it's a really great, sounds fantastic actually, really good. Yeah. And it's that's very Buddhist as well. Tathagata Buddha, the Father Buddha, say, with our thoughts we make the world. Yeah. So, you know, with that thought, then you're creating that. Yeah, and then giving them the power to empower them to that place, then they work out and heal. Fantastic, yeah, good. Yeah.
But Robert, you make a really good point, because one of the things, and I've been having this conversation recently, somebody sent me an email saying, you know, they did someone's program, they thought it was great, because I mentioned a particular program that I really liked, and they said, well, I did it and my life didn't change. And I wrote them an email back and I said, you know what, I said, of all the trainings I've done, I can think of 2 that absolutely categorically changed my life beyond description: the NLP training and the photo reading accelerated learning training. However, they did not solve everything in my life, because I'm still on a journey. And the thing that I really had to get my head around is there wasn't somebody who was going to solve my life, where I just go, I'll just sit back here, you work your magic,
exactly,
you solve everything for me, I'll just my own position. That was a nasty shock actually, because I was hoping that somebody could, but I very quickly dawned on me that
that's the biggest shock I think on the healing journey. Sorry.
Exactly.
It's called the golden pill. In China, they actually have a name for it. They call it the golden pill, where people have got this philosophy that somebody else is going to solve their problems for them, and they're not going to have to do anything. And I mean, when you look at, again, we go all these practices, you know, when you go to the top of these practices, they all end up, it's all looking in self. But with the barefoot doctor in China and the dragon dog shaman in China, it's very much is actually, you know, their end goal is to actually teach you to help yourself. Yeah,
empowering you to recognize. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all bringing. I think all of everything is, and even the law of attraction, especially. I think, you know, that coming back to the point, you're creating your own reality, even though you have, you know, a cellular memory that comes from the physical. You're a branch off another tree. You're the exact same physical entity that was still here thousands of years ago, because we come from us, you know, we're the same physical substance that was here thousands of years ago. We're just in a different form with a different brain and different moving parts, but we've got that cellular memory. We come from the same tree thousands of years ago, but we've got our own individual journey, our own individual soul path, our own individual that we're creating. That's the biggest epiphany. It's like you say about the pill, the matrix part. Do you want the red pill? Do you want the blue pill? You know, you go back and keep being deluded, or do you want the truth about yourself? Yeah. Sorry, another tangent again.
Don't worry,
that's all right.
All the time.
Yeah, this works now, Robbie thing. Yes, that's Chris sighing and going, "Oh God!" It's a Boggie moment. It's a Chris moment. No, I mean it's a Robbie moment. But anyway, the one thing I just wanted to add, I'm getting very excited. Breathe, Boggie, breathe. The one thing I wanted to add was that the one thing you've got to get is that this life is a constant journey. You know, like people saying about, I want to fix all my problems. Not to be negative, but there'll always be something else, because that's how you learn, that's how you grow, and that's how you expand. There'll be something else to figure out. There'll be something else to work on. You know, It doesn't stop, but just like your learning should never stop. Like with you, like Marilyn, you know, you love courses because there's always more to expand on. There's always more to grow on, and that's the point.
Yeah.
Chris, bring us back. Have you got a question?
Yeah, come on. Or we're just going to go off onto talking about some mad tangent.
I was hearing something when you were talking, because you said you had to soften up to make a path for the emotion to flow out of, and I was instantly thinking about muscles, because I've heard or read somewhere about muscles being a store for emotional energy, as it were, and I don't know if you know anything about that.
Well, it's so interesting. I'm always pushing the boundaries. I was at a show, I don't know where the hell I was, XL, and a woman comes over with this little tool that she says you can use for 3 to 5 minutes a day, and it will kind of change your muscles and change your energy. And I have started doing, I admit it works. That's a whole different tangent, so we won't even go there. But one of the things I asked about 2 weeks ago, I went out on Facebook and I said, I've got a question for my friends who are masseurs and sports therapists. I was saying, am I right in thinking that when you stimulate the muscles in terms of, let's say, massage and manipulation, a bit like, you know, if you have a meat tenderizer where you hit the meat and it tenderizes it, I was saying, is it kind of the same with muscles, that when you massage them, number one, you get rid of the lactic acid, which might be causing stiffness, but are you also kind of softening them up in such a way that anything that is stored in them, which might be causing you physical pain, will then be released? And 3 people who are trained massage therapists all came back and said, yeah, pretty much. And that combined with the breathing, because I'm always talking to my clients about the hard breathing, kind of the Hawaiian Huna breathing. And so for me, it's been a very interesting conversation in terms of looking at what happens when we manipulate the muscles in a particular way. What do we release? And I do believe in both cellular memory and muscle memory. And I've just, you know, for the first time ever last year, I'm a bit old for taking it up, as somebody pointed out, but at the age of 47, I took up ballet for the first time in my entire life.
You're never too old. Have you seen Daoist Twist?
He beat me to it. You're never too old.
Exactly.
Horlicks. Anyway,
Daoist Lynch walked into her first yoga class when she was 85.
Wow.
She's in her 90s now. I think is she 100? She's nearly 100 anyway, and she's teaching yoga.
Brilliant.
That's nearly double the age you were before when you went into ballet.
Absolutely. And one of the things I noticed, I looked at people who had done ballet as a child, even when they go, oh my God, it's been ages, the fact that they did it, even at the age of 7 or 8 or 9, when they got back into it as an adult, there was a kind of muscle memory there, which seemed to hold all of the data, which meant that they could just get back into the flow of it. So, and I definitely believe that things get stored in our neurology, that they get stored in the fabric of our being, and then things will trigger those off and they become live. So I'm definitely a fan of, you know, at the moment I'm on a trip of finding out more about, you know, the physicality of our body and what can we do to also release stuff that we hold on to.
Brilliant. I think when you're talking about that as well, when you hear people talking about what they did when they were kids or whatever, and they go, and I did ballet, you know, and when you're hearing them talking about it, it's like they light up, it's like they become that kid again. They're full of joy and passion. They're like, oh, what did you give up for? Because I grew up, you know, not allowed to do that anymore. Why? Because I reached a certain age. What? You know, like we're always going on, especially like my work's about the Merkaba and chasing your joy, you know, chasing your fun. That's your fun. That's your joy. That's the barometer of it. When you're talking about something and you're like, yeah, I used to do that. I used to do this. I used to, you know, that's what you should be doing now. You know? Yeah.
And there's an interesting thing with like you're saying about the muscle memory in a system, a style I do, which is Shindao massage, but it is within the Chinese word Tui Na. That all your muscles relate to different subjects or issues. So tension within your neck. If you have tension in your neck, it is the bridge between what you believe and what you can physically achieve has been restricted or blocked. So tension in your neck is actually indicating that you have all these things that you want to do, but you're physically struggling to do them. Tension within the shoulder, the whole atlas, the world is on their shoulders, that they feel bogged down, they feel pressured by the problems in their shoulders. Tension within stiffness and tension within the hands in Tui Na and Shindao is that your position, the things you want to do, when it gets to the nitty gritty, you're struggling with doing them, that you feel clumsy, whether it's physically or emotionally, metaphysically, but you're fumbling, you're starting to be affected by certain things. So the whole muscle structure, the muscles mean certain things. So when I work on people's back, I actually say, oh, this means this, and of course they'll say, oh, you're psychic. I'm as psychic as a teapot, is my old saying.
You are psychic,
but it's the muscles that I'm reading, the muscle structure that I was taught. And one of the guys who originally taught me, and then I was taught by my Sifu Shun, but he taught, Po, and he taught my friend Terry first, my martial brother. He was very scientific. If it didn't make scientific sense,
Boggie's looked up. You talked about photo reading, and I was just wondering if you could explain like a little bit about that while we wait for Boggie to come back.
Yeah, sure. Oh gosh, that's another one of those that just seemed just too outlandish to be true. The premise of photo reading is how to read at 25,000 words per minute, and the average reader reads between 200 and 300 words a minute, just to put it into context. So how to read at 25,000 words per minute, and how to photo read a whole book in 5 minutes and then be able to remember and recall what you've read. And I came across that at a time where in my late 20s, I was diagnosed with what was thought to be early onset Alzheimer's. And my doctor had said, there's nothing we can do for you medically. And I was studying to be a chartered accountant at that time. And so he said, the only thing I can offer you, I can give you a medical certificate explaining your condition. And the ACCA will maybe give you extra time in your exams. That might give you a bit of time to get your brain in gear. But there's nothing else that I can do for you. And just about that time, I got a leaflet through the door, because they used to send, brochures. And it said, would you like to double or treble your reading speed? Would you like to drink in information like you're drinking it in through a fire hose? Would you like to, pass any exam and be a competent public speaker? I was like, yeah. Seriously, I was, Robbie, I was. And then when it said about 25,000 words a minute, I thought, now this is a con. This is going to be one of those American systems, which is all hype and no action. And even skeptical as I was, I gave them a couple of £100 and I ordered what in those days were tapes. I will admit, because I was very skeptical and closed-minded, of the 8 tapes, and I've got them sat here on the shelf behind me if you really want to see them. I listened to about 1.5 and then I just lost faith in it. And then a couple of years later, when I was on my NLP training, the guy who was running the course, he was quoting names, dates, places, facts, figures, case studies, and somebody said, how do you remember this stuff? And he says, I read 20 to 30 books a month. At which point I thought, well, you obviously don't get out much, mate, because how can you read 20 to 30 books a month and work a full-time job 12 hours a day, which is what crack training is? And so somebody then says, how do you read that many books every single month? And he said, I photo read. And that's when I thought, I've got those tapes sat at home on the shelf gathering dust. And that's where I coined the phrase shelf development. And I thought, I'm going to go back. I'm going to listen to those tapes with an open mind. I'm not going to second guess everything. And the catalyst really was when I did my practitioner training, you do a test at home, open book, you listen to 24 tapes, you've got 3 books and you do a test. My test apparently was so rubbish that they were like, who is this Marilyn Devonish? She must be lazy or stupid, because it was just terrible. And I had like 2 months to do that test. When I decided that it wasn't all hocus pocus and I signed up for master practitioner, it was 3 weeks later. So now I didn't have months to waste. I had 2 weeks technically once I'd listened to 36 tapes, done the books and done a bit of accountancy work, which I should have been doing. And I decided I was going to go home. I was going to listen to those 8 photo reading tapes. I was going to read the book. I wasn't going to try and second guess them and thought I knew better. And I went back to that training 3 weeks later. I had put a goal in my timeline at this point, having started to experiment with timeline therapy, that I would finish that test. It will be so good that I only got it back once to say, well done, good job. And with the first test, I was going home with it every single night for 5 nights in a row, and to get it to an acceptable standard.
Yeah.
Handed it in at Master Prac, and the test is humongous. It's much bigger than practitioner. So it takes them about 7 days to mark them all. Of the 55, well, I think there were about 75, 80 people on that training. I think I was probably the only person whose test did not require any corrections. So it handed it to me and it said, well done, good job. And I've still got it upstairs. I've kept it for memento. And then 5 months later, I decided to become a trainer of NLP, having not known anything, 8 months before. And part of the assessment is an 1-day, 8-hour closed book exam. I had set myself a goal that I was going to be finished in 3 hours, yada. And the day of the exam comes. I walk into the venue. We were at the Hilton Hotel in Wrights Lane in Kensington, having only photo read. Now, I didn't revise. I just photo read, flicking through the book at 25,000 words per minute, doing some mind maps. And I walk in. Someone looks at me and says, "How do you do a submodalities belief change?" I looked at them. They looked at me. I just burst into tears because I thought, I don't know anything. I've just wasted $4,000. And I just decided I've got 3 choices. I could just cry all day. I could beat myself up for not revising properly, as in reading every single word, or I could do what I've been practicing at home, which is about getting yourself into a good state where you're relaxed, you're calm, you're balanced, you're centered, you've got left and right brain integration. And I could sit this exam and do my best. And I was finished that exam 3 hours on the money. And my paper was so good, apparently, that they were like, who is this Marilyn Devonish? Did she cheat? Because we cannot figure out how she did that. And for me, that's when I thought, I've got to learn how to train this stuff, because if Miss Me, skeptical, closed-minded, very cynical, could then go from that point to, it was like a miracle. I was like, I've got to show this to other people. And so that's
nice. Yeah. And I think being an advocate for it, instead of it just being sitting there or being some words, you being animated about it, I think that's brilliant, because and having a personal story, I think that's really powerful. That's I'm definitely having a look into that.
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking, so literally photo reading is you just look at a page for so many seconds and then you flip on to the next page.
So there's a little book, but this is how it would look. Actually, let me stand up so you can see the book rather than me. This is what it would look like to photo read this book. And you're turning the pages at that kind of speed. And you do that from start to finish. So a typical book, this one take about 3 or 4 minutes once you kind of get into the swing of it. When I run the trainings, I give people 5 to 6 minutes to photo read it. But you're basically turning the pages and doing what I call like a mental download.
Yes.
And just taking it all in. The thing about it is, like Sifu mentioned it earlier on a couple of times, it's come up several times, that word intention. In photo reading, we call it your purpose. But before you even touch the book, you're saying, what is my purpose? What do I want to know? What do I want to learn? What do I want to take away from this? And then the part of your brain that is called the RAS, the reticular activating system, will leap into action. And so as all those words are going across your visual field, it's not random, because you've told your brain what you want. So as all of that data is flashing before your eyes, your brain can start making sense of it and putting a bit of a context around it, and now starting to pick out the things that are relevant.
Yeah, I think it's activating the parts that are already there, though. It's recognizing that we're able to do that. And if you're able to do it, I'm able to do it. And if I'm able to do it, anybody's able to do it. I think that's the recognition that our brains are much more powerful than we believe they are. Or we've been trained to believe that they're not, you know, because of the way that commerce works as well. Do you know what I mean? Nobody can be that clever. You're not allowed to be that clever. You know, well, we're all that clever. It's recognizing we're all that clever. You know what I thought of when you said that? You seen Unlimited?
Yes. Limitless,
that's it.
Yeah.
Limitless. Yeah.
I knew what you meant.
Unlimited. Yeah, I've not been on your course because I thought it was called Unlimited. I couldn't even get one word right.
We know what you meant.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I think that is that film as well. I think these are all ascension films. I think these are all films to make you realize, actually, do you know what what the IQ tests are not sufficient, because we're capable of so much more, and it's about activating that. The pill could be a placebo. In that film, it's a pill, it's a chemical. We believe in that because we can understand the science. But that's what we can do. That's what we're capable of. And because I did a training year about just after a channeled clarion call. I'd changed profession for a while, for about 6 months, and I went on this training course, and the NLP chap that did it, I had read the book through, and he believed that I knew all the stuff in this whole book. And it was something very similar to what you're talking about. I didn't believe that I knew all the stuff in the book, but the way that the words that he used to access my mind at the time, I read the whole book, and I read the whole book backwards. Within this, he just accessed the way that I didn't even know that I could do this, but I actually recalled the whole book backwards. And I'm like, what? It actually, within this was it's very similar to what you're talking about, but it was just a different technique that he used to access what I didn't even realize that I knew already. I thought, well, I've had one read through, that'll do just now. I'll put that down. I'll go back to it tonight. I'll study more again. Do you know what I mean? The traditional way of studying. But actually, it turned out I already knew everything that was in that whole book through one read through. But that's anybody that can do that. It's just about you recognizing that you can do that. And that's what what it looks like you're teaching. That's really exciting. Yeah.
But the reason I've got the Limitless movie, I had never seen the movie. I had a medical doctor. He was studying to be a neurosurgeon. And he came onto the photo reading workshop. And on the Friday night, he came up to me and he says, have you seen the movie Limitless? And I was like, Robert De Niro, Bradley Cooper, heard of it, haven't seen it. He says, you need to watch the film. He said, because everything you are teaching here is in the movie. The only thing that you're not doing is time shifting. And then he came back on the Sunday night, because it's 2.5 days, and he says, Marilyn, I take it back. You are time shifting, because we cover such an incredible amount on the training, and people change so dramatically. It's like being in a time warp. But so we finished on the Sunday. The Monday I went and hunted for the movie. I watched it. I was like, Dr. Koss, his name is Dr. Koss Vantis. I says, Dr. Koss, I've just watched Limitless. You're absolutely right. Everything we're teaching in photo reading is in the movie, and we're doing it in real life. It's just
wonderful. Yeah.
Because I learned it in advanced learning techniques. I studied back in I think it was mid-90s, and yeah, that was photo scanning, they called it, or scanning, and yeah, the beginning version was like you got a book and you either with your finger, and because they went back to the whole thing of when you was a child you use your finger, and of course at some point you get told off. But what they start off on the slow version was that you have a pencil or even a chopstick I used to use, and you would go across the words, and your eyes would relax your eyes to focus on the point of the pen or the chopstick, and you scan across. And then they said later they then did doing the pages. So, but yeah, I mean, let's say there's so many different ways and so many different names of different techniques, but it's all there, and the point is, your brain can process so much more than we realise.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the point.
But I think having this taught, having an advocate for that, having somebody who already does that, and because it doesn't sound like a real thing. When you first hear it, it doesn't sound like a real thing. And it's something that's like my book's like the cognitive dissonance is so strong that it hampers, it hinders your learning. It hinders you. It's not that it hinders your learning because you're able to learn. It just hinders the belief that you've got in your learning. You know, when you realize you can do it, you can do it. Just go and do it. You know.
But this is why we need people like Marilyn, like ourselves. You know, the more people getting out there. You know, this is it's one of the things I always say. When I was at school, I got told off at school. So I left school in 1986, and I used to get told off for when I was listening. I'd draw a circle, put the subject in the center of the circle, and then draw little lines and draw little circles round it. And I would get told off constantly for doing that because I was scribbling. I was graffitiing or scribbling in my books. A few years on, I then learned spider diagrams. I said, hold up, I was doing that already. You know, I was doing that naturally as a kid. And here comes Marilyn with a book.
I don't think you see that. This is the original from Tony Buzan.
Tony Buzan, that's what I was saying earlier, yeah.
At this point, he's probably about 19 years old. So this is the one that came out in the 1980s. I got him to sign it for me when I met him a few years ago.
Cool.
And he shouted so loud that everyone in the room stopped what they were doing because he was like, oh my God, where did you get this? Because he had not seen himself like that for ages. But this is the original Use Your Head mind mapping book. And it's very much about, you know, the drawing, the scribbling. And I borrowed this one from my sister when I was at school. I must have been about 12 years old. And I just fell in love with mind mapping. It's one of the things that I teach on photo reading because it is so powerful.
Perfect.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's one of the big, like I said, I did it as a kid naturally, and you know, got told off at school. I was like, you know, you're a rebel, you know, you're graffitiing. And then it's like, hold up, all the certain things that I was doing. And then when back then in the 80s, I did Open University and started learning the stuff I wanted to learn. And because I was doing the stuff I actually wanted to learn in the way I knew how to get it to sink in my head, I did far better. You know, I learned Eastern philosophy, did theology, did Eastern philosophy, Western philosophy, theology, studied quantum physics, and did it, you know, to at least, you know, the open universities and, you know, sort of like master's level. And I was picking this stuff up because I was learning, I had the passion, and I was learning in the way I knew how to, you know, I allowed myself to learn in that way. And that was the biggest thing is that the stuff you're teaching and the stuff you're saying is, if everybody was doing it that way, you know, doing different variations with, you know, whichever way works best with them, because in essence, because Tony Buzan, again, he was one of the original ones of these a lot advanced learning techniques, and he was pushing, again, you know, like you said, like that was in the 80s or late 80s, and in the 90s were all these books that I started picking up more and more of these books about advanced learning techniques and different ways of learning. Different, you know, people have, you know, physical to emotional to you know, like, and the way we learn in schools is all about the industrial age. It was all about, it was the way that they taught was the way they wanted everybody just to get to a certain level so they could basically use the machines. Well, it's all about using the machines, so they were competent enough to use the machines. And one of the biggest things I learned when I started teaching martial arts back in the 80s, I got a couple of gigs in private schools. And when I went to the private schools, I suddenly realised, hold up, private schools don't have to teach the way that, you know, normal comprehensive schools is totally different to the way they're teaching. I mean, totally different to the way they teach in certain private schools. They were using all this stuff that I sort of found they were using as standard practice. They were teaching people in certain private schools in a totally different way, and they were excelling in a totally different way
because it's a different role. Because it's a different role that they have. The majority are set up in society, like you say, to keep everything going, to run the machines. And there are certain points, and this is about societal structure. That's about a societal structure that it's known that human capacity is great. It's just those that are in control, and then nobody's in control really. We're all in control. It's our consciousness. But the way that the hierarchy is set up is so that them that have, the have and have nots, them that have and such as have, are taught from the advanced place that humans are able to achieve, and they're taught to believe that they can achieve. Whereas if you're at a certain point in the societal structure, you're at the bottom of the pyramid. You need to just you operate the machinery, and that's it. Don't ask any questions. Don't get above your station. But the truth is, there is no station. There is no hierarchy. There is no anything. And just now, the proliferation of this kind of learning, and especially the last 10, 15 years, the internet, you can learn anything now. You don't have to have a private school. You don't have to have a load of money. You can get an MIT education for free on the internet right now, for free. And that's just about you applying it. That's about laziness or about will. If you have the will to do it, you can do anything. And that's what's so exciting about Ascension, about right now, about everybody waking up in many different levels, I'm sorry, I'll go off on a tangent here if I'm rein me back in. Come on, Chris, do your work. Come on. When Robbie and Boggie get going, that's it.
And Marilyn, I think
he's another fireball.
I'm going to do Jedi mind trick. Marilyn, new co-host. Marilyn, new co-host.
Yeah.
Marilyn, new co-host.
Yeah.
Marilyn, new co-host. These are the co-hosts you're looking for. But for me, the whole age of Aquarius, the ascension, the golden realm, that's because the old paradigm of the pyramid of there were a few people at the top of the elite and then all the masses underneath, that's dissolving. It's it's not about revolution, it's about evolution. People like ourselves, people like Marilyn, all this information that's coming out, and as we wake people up. And for me, ascension is actually up, waking up.
Yes.
Waking up to the fact that actually you're far more powerful than you realise.
And information is enough. We talk about the spiritual ascension. That's important, the different stage of our spiritual evolution. But information is enough. Just knowing is enough. If we know and we're able to dissect, we're able to scrutinise the system, that's enough. That's enough for us all to make. What is it, Buckminster Fuller? Don't fix the system. Build a new system. Build a better system. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you only get that from information. When you can see it, when you know you're capable of this. You're capable of speed reading 25,000 words. Like, huh? That's the initial. Huh? Oh. That's the initial thought processes.
Robbie, I'm laughing now because there's a guy called Paul McKenna. Some people will know him from Hypnosis Days and other from I Can Make You Rich, I Can Make You Thin. Yeah. But there's a study in the photo reading book where Paul McKenna and some of these guys did some experiments. They were photo reading at speeds of up to 1 million words a minute. So not 25,000, 1 million. And they were then taking comprehension tests and getting 70 and 80%. So 25,000 words a minute is very slow. Because these guys are pushing it into the millions, and so you're right. We are scratching the surface.
Exactly. Yeah.
Indeed. And the other thing, Marilyn, I've got your lightsaber when you're ready, Jedi. So that's Chilia, my Chris's Sifu, my student, Baz Chilia, he'll be sighing again because I'm always bringing lightsaber in or a hammer with Tai Chi symbol on it. But you're a Jedi, but that's what we need. the Jedi, the Egyptian word Jedi, pillar of light. It's all about bringing in the lights. And it's all the information. We're you know, that's what we are. We are Jedis. We are the keepers, and we are the bringers of light. We bring light is knowledge, and that's what we need now. We don't need fear. We don't need all, you know. We know everything. We know that things are not right. So now it's time to fix them. Now it's time to learn. Exactly. But it's, you know, you can change your own life. You can, you know, these things are possible. You can learn.
That's how we change everything. We change our own life. Don't change everybody else. Don't change everybody else. Change yourself. And then people go, how do you do that? How do you do that?
I was just about to come on to. Because I have a question here. Because Marilyn was talking before you came on, Robbie, about terrible jobs, then getting a new job, then doing this, then doing that. That is a cycle I see a lot. Someone's going, oh, I hate this job. I'm just going to go out and get another one. And I'm thinking, it's not the job you're unhappy with.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I was wondering, what is it that, could you describe maybe the journey or what changed your mindset to get you from where you were to somewhere else? I'm not going to say where you are now, because I imagine that would take about 20 years, but
what was the catalyst of change?
Yes, thank you, Robbie.
Well, it was partly money, because I'd laid out about £4,000 for this NLP training, and I now wanted a refund. And so when they said you're not getting a refund, halfway through, they kept going on about playing full out, playing at 100%. I'm like, yada, yada, yada. And I thought, you know what? In order for me to qualify for the refund, I'm going to throw myself into every single process and every single exercise for the next 3 days, having wasted 4 days moaning. And I'm just going to prove that it doesn't work. And then, therefore, you cannot dispute when I want my money back. And so the only reason I decided to jump in with both feet and let go, because I was very reserved, was for the money. I wanted that £4,000 back, because I found out my partner had had an affair, and I'd given up. I used to work in an investment bank in the city, ABN AMRO. So I'd given up the job at the investment bank, went back to study accountancy, the premise being that he would work to support me. And then when I qualified as an accountant, he would give up work to do his pilot's license. And then I found out he's having an affair, yada, yada, yada. So now I'm single with no job, with early onset Alzheimer's, and can barely string 2 sentences together, and I'm getting pretty much 0 on some of my papers. And so the money was the driving factor. I needed that £4,500 to finance the next month or two. But having then jumped in with both feet and had some of those cathartic moments where I was basically broken open in public. This was not good for me, where I'm like crying in public. That was unheard of.
Great for you. Great for you. When you see it down the line, great for you. But yeah, at the time, horrendous experience. Yeah.
It was embarrassing. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And it was one of those, I remember we were doing a timeline therapy piece, and I think this was the defining moment that changed everything for me. The guy was explaining how to do it, and he said, we're going to work at resolving anger, sadness, fear, and guilt. Now, I put my hand up. I was being genuine. I was not being facetious at this point. And I genuinely said, I don't do anger. Do I miss that emotion out and go straight to the next one? He looks at me in front of 65, 70 people and goes, well, it won't take long then, will it? At which point,
some anger surfaced.
I don't do anger. So
I don't do anger.
Like, you know, I'm like, how dare he speak to me like that in front of everyone? I didn't pay my money to be spoken to like that, and I didn't get it. I didn't even get the connection at the time. And we start doing this process, and so the woman I'm working with, a lovely lady called Gina, she takes me through the process for anger. She gets partway through, and I start crying. I mean, first the tears were just coming, and I'm trying to do this with, you know, I've got my eyes closed because I'm up above my timeline. And eventually it was a torrent, it was a flood. And she calls a guy called Paul Vernon over, and they're talking above my head like I don't exist. And he's saying, where are you at in the process? She's saying, well, I've just got her above point number 2. She's looking down on the old event. She's releasing the old emotion. She just starts crying, and there's nothing in the script when your client starts crying uncontrollably. And so Paul basically said, okay, what's happened is, you've released the thin veneer of anger that she doesn't have. And now what's coming up is all of the repressed sadness. And he said, what I want you to do, we were only going to do one emotion that night. He says, take your client through, finish anger, and then finish sadness, so she's in a good space, and then continue tomorrow. And in that moment, I felt the emotions leave my body. And even though I didn't see what was up above my timeline, because, you know, people are saying, I can see cherubs, I can see angels, I feel like I'm floating. For me, I'm like, my eyes are closed, it's dark. Next. That was my attitude. But even though I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything, I wasn't floating and I wasn't smelling rose petals, I was so aware that those emotions came up from nowhere that I didn't even know I had, and they were gone. And that was me. That's when I sort of went, oh my God, I think there's something in this. And then from then on, it was
best $4,000 you
all to
ever
play
spent.
for, let's do it.
Yeah,
and that was the defining moment. And that was like, wow. And then the last 3 days were transformational beyond belief. And I went from, my dad used to describe it, I wouldn't say boo to a goose. And I went from that to now the problem is not getting me to talk, it's getting me to shut up, as you probably realise.
Fantastic though. But that's exactly who you really are, yeah? Yeah, you're really, instead of like holding it all back, now you're living, you're really living, and you're expressing yourself.
Marilyn, you're in the right place.
Yeah. She's a new co-host. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Talk Club.
Yeah.
The first
thing,
you talk about Talk Club. Always talk about Talk Club.
Yeah.
Don't shut up about Talk Club.
The second rule of Talk Club is look at the first rule of Talk Club.
The fourth rule of Talk Club, Merkaba.
Yeah, you just keep repeating Merkaba.
And do you know where your lightsaber is? Anyway.
Yeah, my first catalyst in life was this NLP course. Second catalyst was going on Boggie's show. That's it.
Not again.
So that course was the catalyst then for your transformation from the terrible to the positive.
It was. I'm not kidding you. I was, up until the age of 32, very quiet, very shy, lacking in confidence. I didn't know I had low self-esteem, but it was in there. But I was also miserable as sin. Nothing was my fault. The world was against me. There was nothing I could do about my situation. I actually believed I was born on a Wednesday, because there was a little thing that said Wednesday's child is full of woe. And because seriously, that's what I believed. And I've got 3 sisters. One of them, my older sister, is very outgoing, what you call extrovert. And I just always believed I was the quiet one. And that was my lot in life. I had no concept that it was even possible to change. And that 7 days and then going on 3 weeks later to do the master crack was, I came out the end, not a different person, because like Robbie was saying, it's who I maybe always was. Yeah. I just had no way to access it and bring it out. So up until the age of 32, the way I describe it, I felt as though I lived my life on the sidelines. I was watching other people enjoy themselves, have friends, expressing themselves, talking to people, and I was just on the outside looking in. And then suddenly I'm like, oh my God, this is what life can be like. And then it became a journey of exploration from that day in October 2000.
Woo.
Okay, I'm going to jump around a little bit here. How long does it take to learn photo reading as a skill?
If I'm working with, I think my record has got to be, and this, I don't recommend it because it was intense. I worked with a guy he was a policeman, a bobby on the street, and he wanted to be a police sergeant. He had taken his sergeant exams 3 years in a row, failed. And his bosses had said in no uncertain terms, maybe this is not for you. You've got the younger guys coming up through the ranks. Maybe you're not sergeant's material. So he phoned me in desperation, and we worked together for about an hour and a half. He did the exam a week later because he didn't leave himself much time. And when he got his results, not only did he pass, he's in the top 25 percentile for the entire country. Wow. And this is a guy who was going to retire from the force and go into private security because he just didn't want to be a bobby anymore. So an hour and a half has got to be the record in terms of one-to-one. But if somebody's doing, let's say, the workshop, it's a 2.5 day workshop. So we do a Friday afternoon stroke evening, and then all day Saturday, all day Sunday. So what would we do? 3 till 8 on a Friday, 9:30 to 6:30 on a Saturday and Sunday, and that's it. You go in one end, and I've had people who've come. There's one lady, I'll say her name, Kay Westmoreland, because she's written a blog for me about it. She had brain damage 7 years before she did photo reading, did all the tests at Queen's in London, all this, and nothing they could do for her. After the 2.5 days, went back out to client site on Monday, was back to her old self, to the extent where her clients noticed. And a few weeks later, she was sat with her mother, and her mum looked at her and says, Kay, you're back. In terms of the Kay before the brain damage, she was in a plane crash.
Fantastic.
So
Fantastic.
after I've had people with dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, brain damage, and of course people who just want to learn how to. People think they're going to learn to read faster. That's like, yeah, whatever. Anyway, and that's where, intuition, creativity, decision-making skills, the ability to speak fluently without notes, all of this stuff. Like Robbie, you were saying with the book, it's all in there. And this is just the way, let's show you how to access who you are and what you know. So 2.5 days for a workshop. And I'd say 5 to 6 hours, ideally, if I'm working with someone one-to-one.
Just as an aside to that, because I think that's brilliant for practical use of stuff that you want to, textbooks or something you want to learn, or a new language, or these kind of stuff. How do you find that it affects you as far as fiction text? Like, what I mean is, you read, like, I just read War and Peace in an hour and a half. Do you know what I mean? What I mean is, there's a certain emotional content that comes with the ABC and reading, and it gets to that part, and then it gets to that part. Do you know what I mean? If you can do that in half an hour, do you read a book for pleasure in a different way?
Now, there are 5 steps for photo reading, and one of the steps is you talked about reading backwards. So one of the things I say to people, if you're reading a book story, you want to just get into the novel, read it upside down and back to front, and don't do a preview, because you actually might find out the butler did it, and that just spoils everything. So I'd say photo read it upside down and back to front. But the effect that it has, like if you've got a favorite movie and watched it 2 or 3 times, you get different nuances. And you notice other details, and you're even convinced, even if it's your own DVD, you're convinced that wasn't on the original. And what people find is they get a richer, almost like a 3D experience of reading the book when they photo read it, because it almost puts in that first layer, and then you're building up this wonderful 3D image of it.
Wow. Can I actually ask you as well? I think that's brilliant. I've had a few different questions in my head. As with relation to the Alzheimer's, and you're recognizing, because you're obviously, you've taken a different step. That's not your reality. What practical, what have you done about that? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you didn't accept, I'm not accepting that diagnosis, and you went a different way, and you're obviously suffering from that, right? But that was your diagnosis. Is there anything that you're doing about that, or is there anybody that's, I'm not sure what question I'm actually asking here. I maybe had a half-formed question in my head, but I think because you mentioned it a few times, and I just want you to elaborate on that, how that has affected your life from diagnosis to you obviously going a different path, and you're fine, you're wonderful, absolutely fantastic.
Articulate.
Very articulate, and all of your, you express yourself wonderfully, and you can obviously access all the parts that more than the average, so what have you done as far as that's concerned, or have you discussed that with any medical people, or have you done any tests, or have you expanded on it in any way to help other people that might have a similar diagnosis, or is that just part of your course? Or I'm not sure exactly what one question I'm asking here, but you know what I mean.
So I'll tell you what I did. What I did first of all, when I first had that diagnosis, I was about 27, 28. And I was like that for 4 years. And what I did was I took every vitamin under the sun: ginkgo biloba, bee pollen, this tincture, yarrow root, black wart, this, that, and the other. You would walk into a room, sometimes find me doing a handstand, so I'm upside down because I'd heard that would send blood to the brain. I was reading books about improving your memory. I started drinking green tea, gave up tea and coffee. So did all of those practical things, which didn't really make any difference. The thing that changed was learning about photo reading and accelerated learning, because it's called whole brain, whole mind learning. And I went from October 2000 still struggling and turning in that terrible test in practitioner to November 2000, so that's just 3 weeks later, turning in this amazing test, which was pretty much word perfect. The only thing that I did differently was apply the photo reading and start to believe in my own abilities. Because for the first 4 years, that was my diagnosis and that was my reality. You couldn't have told me any different, because I know that I would read something and I'd have to read it 15 to 20 times to get it to sort of stick in my head. And then I could sit in the exam room and the paper would be pretty much blank at the end of it, because there was nothing. And people say, well, maybe you're not good in exams. And I was like, no, let me just put this into context. When I did my business studies degree, I worked 40 hours a week, plus was at university full time. So I worked evening, and I don't just mean I had jobs where you had to think. I worked for Barkers of Kensington and the Harrods Group in their accounts department, export department, and cash office. And I started working there when I was 15. And I also was a director's PA at Cornwall Row in Birmingham for all of the big banks, because I did typing and shorthand. So these were jobs where I really had to think. And I was doing a full-time degree, and I would still be able to churn out a paper in record time and sit and do an exam and get first. And I went from that to reading a book 15 to 20 times and having no recollection of what I'd read. And that's when I was like, Houston, we have a problem. And that's when I went to see my doctor. But in terms of what I did was learn how to photo read, learn how to use my brain in a different way, and started to utilize more of what you call the learning styles. So I became more flexible and more fluid in my learning. And I also started to believe in my own capability. And I started to see that as human beings, I believe we are scratching the surface. And once I got a glimpse of what I call my genius potential, the rest of it, as they say, was history. But basically, It was photo reading and mindset.
Excellent.
I think
superb.
From my perspective, I think that's the one thing that is very underrated in our society is mindset. It's you hear it all the time now in survival stories. The classic one is the boat, where they've got the captain in one boat and the first officer and some of the other crew in the other boat, and the first officers are all gonna die, and the captain's like, don't worry, we'll be rescued. Two totally different mindsets. The captain's rationing out the food, the first officer doesn't really care. Yeah. Try and guess which ones survive.
Yeah. It's true. We do create on different levels as well. I see it metaphysically as far as creating through the understanding of the holographic nature, but that's going a bit deep. That's really opening your Merkaba. But just from a practical point of view, if you're moaning about stuff all the time, or you believe, or you're always saying, oh, this is my law and that's all that I'm going to do, as opposed to somebody who's going, no, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. The person that says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, generally does. They just have a better motivation. There's just a raising of the vibration. It's on different levels, really. I think. Yeah.
Well, they did a thing on luck. I've said this before, so I won't overdo it. But they said they did a case study on luck, and luck boils down to probability. Is like somebody's a lucky person. The more people you talk to, the more opportunities that will arise talking to those people. So therefore, the more lucky you are. So, I as a kid, I used to think about stuff like this, and I used to think, well, if I don't give up, there's a great saying my nan, who's Irish, used to say, is a broken clock is right twice a day. And I used to love that saying, and I've basically manifested, if there's probably anything there'll be on my gravestone, if I had a gravestone, it would be broken clock is right twice a day. Though some people would say Boggie thinks he's right every moment.
No, it's not. It's going to say, I know nothing. I am from Barcelona.
Yes, it will say that, definitely. And you'll have a lightsaber sticking out of the ground. But that saying, is that means, in essence, that if you stick to your guns, yes, try to adapt to stuff and adapt the thing. But if you stick to your guns, sooner or later it will work. Einstein proved that. He did. So originally he said he'll never be good enough. In science they declined him. I think it was in the 50 and 60 times. J.K. Rowling, 50 times before a book. The guy I always forget who's Starbucks. They said a coffee shop, I won't swear, a coffee shop would never would never be a success. It will never be a coffee shop on its own will never be a success. Little do they know. Dyson, again, there's all these people who never gave up, and that's the point. Learn other ways, learn other techniques, keep going, don't give up. That's the point. And I think that's the evolution. That's what we get into, is that there's all these skills, all these techniques, and all you've got to do is just give them a chance.
Find out about them. That's what's great about Marilyn. That's what's great about people that are passionate about what it is that they do, and that I've had personal experience. I think personal experience is everything. I think it has to be experiential, or the passion doesn't really come through, because there's loads of these people that do lots of different courses. There's a law of attraction is one especially. There's loads of people teaching the law of attraction that don't really, they've taken a course and they're like, oh, you can get so many clients, or you can do this coaching, or you can do that coaching, or whatever it is. And if they don't actually have an experience of having been changed by it, it comes over as somebody trying to sell a course. It doesn't come over as somebody that's passionate and genuine and that's going to help you. When you hear you talking about it, Marilyn, you can feel the passion. You know that it's real. Do you know what I mean? You know that that's authentic, and you don't need to sell it. It's not about selling a course or you know what I mean, getting a load of clients. It's about doing something that you know is going to help them because you've been helped by it yourself. Exactly. Yeah.
And it's so funny. Next weekend, I'm running a workshop with someone who is in the movie The Secret. And so I'm going to be, I might not tell you in advance, I might tell you in advance, but one of the things I'm going to be talking about is my take on the law of attraction. One of the reasons why I think it went slightly awry, and my take on how you get it to work for you, because like you said, it's not this blanket thing where I'm going to ask for stuff and then it will just land on your head. There's more to it than that. But she was in that movie, and she's often known as the secret behind the secret, because she does feng shui and energy work, and when she stepped in, the movie was going nowhere. So she went in and changed all the energy and the dynamics, and then it became this phenomenon. But we're running a workshop on next Saturday, and that's one of the things I'm going to be getting her to talk about, is not just the academics of it, but like you said, the bringing it to life and the real true experience of living it and breathing it and seeing it in action.
Fantastic. So that's next weekend. And is there anything else that you want to, I know that we're getting ready to wrap up here. Is there anything else that you would like to plug, or that you would like to, what's your website? What's your books? What's your current things going on just now? What would you like to, because I know that we're running. Express, because we're running out of time.
Marilyn, meet your new promoter.
Great. Well, the website, I'll say it's all one word, but it's quite a long word. It's www.transformationstm.com, and it's TRANCE as in hypnotic trance, formations, F for Freddy, ORMATIONS, and then TM as in trademark. So www.transformationstm.com. So that's the website. And in terms of social media, everything is pretty much, apart from Instagram, everything is /Marilyn Devonish. It's MARILYN for November, and then Devonish is Devon with an ISH on the end, so DEVONISH. So you'll always find me on Facebook. I do love Facebook. I love a good old Facebook live chat. Same with LinkedIn, Twitter. That's my handle. My email is marilyn@transformationstm.com. The next thing, the thing I've got coming up next is this thing that I'm doing with a lady called Marie Diamond, who's in the movie The Secret, and we're doing a workshop about wealth magic. And it's wealth. When we say wealth, we're not just talking about money. It's really about joy and happiness. That's a big part of it. And so we're doing it as a live workshop or as a live stream. So we've got people, I think, from 7 or 8 countries coming so far. So they'll be watching at home, much like we're interacting now via video. And then the photo reading workshops, I run those 2 to 3 times a year as public workshops. And then in between that, I might do bespoke stuff, or if a company wants to let me in through their doors, I'll go in and run corporate versions of it as well, and doing, you know, one-to-one coaching. So those are the kind of
and everything can be accessed through your website, which is
www.transformationstm.com, and then it's /photo reading. So that's the way that you would spell it if you were looking for it. And there's a whole section on my website about the photo reading, some, you know, client testimonial videos. I always think they're important. You don't just want to hear my experience of it. So all of that is on the website as well. And every year, first weekend of December, I run something called the Mind, Body, Spirit and Soul Energy Fest. And it's an event where you come and look at all aspects to set you up for the year ahead. So those are the things that are always in the calendar. And then in between that, I will always come up with weird and wonderful ideas throughout the year. So I just say to people, join my mailing list and you'll be able to keep tabs on where I am and what I'm doing.
And all of those links are available below, Boggie, yeah?
Yes, all the links have already been put onto the comment section, the live feed comment section of YouTube. They are already actually in the, if you're on YouTube, you'll see it actually in the information anyway, because it's all also already on the bio on the Way of Mindful Consciousness. Actually, no, it's the other way around. But anyway, it's on the Facebook page. It is also will be on the. If you're listening on podcast, it is. You will find it on the podcast. Do not worry, it is already there.
It's all there. It's all there for you.
It's all there. I'm not as crazy.
The wonder of Marilyn is all before you.
Oh yes, yeah. So I mean, but see, look, we did. I mean, hopefully you can stay just for a little bit longer after we close down. But we said that 2 hours will fly by, and boy, has it. I mean, I have had. It has been an awesome show.
And
I've been very excited. I know. I haven't said anything because I didn't want to. I didn't want to do the Jedi mind trick of your phone start ringing again. But so anyway, let's wrap up time. So start with Robbie. Is there anything else you know?
I've really enjoyed that. I think it's wonderful. It's bringing back things to me as well. I'm definitely going to have a look at the photo reading and have a look at your website. It's exciting stuff. A really powerful light worker. Wonderful. I'm going to have a look at your festival as well. It's like you're doing great work. Excellent. Really, really, really enjoyed meeting you. Really enjoyed sharing your space. So fantastic. So thanks for coming on. Really appreciated it. Yeah.
Chris.
Thank you for the invitation.
It's been a fascinating show. Introduction to so many different topics that I haven't heard about before. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for your wonderful questions.
Oh, thank you.
Well, he is the questioner.
Yeah, the questioner.
And I mean, oh, indeed. I've got to say, I mean, well, actually, I'll throw it out there already. I think you need to come back. I don't think we've had enough time to cover a thing. I think we will talk about it off air, but I do feel another show. I did say it, and I'm serious. If you want to come any time in the future as a co-host, you're more than welcome, most definitely. So,
cool.
but
amazing.
That'll
That'll be amazing.
It's not a problem. We'll talk about it off air. But anyway, have you got any last comments? Any last things to say before?
Well, what I wanted to say, you know, Chris, Robbie, Sifu, it has been absolutely wonderful to spend the evening with you. Such fascinating, enlightening, thought-provoking conversation. I think we could have probably filled 10 hours worth of airtime.
Definitely.
And hopefully still have it be fascinating for people. So I absolutely loved it. And I also just want to say thank you as well to someone who is responsible for this collaboration, a lovely lady called Anne Jersh, because Anne is the one who put me in touch and said, I think you'd be great for this show. So I really want to say thank you to Anne. And the reason I want to emphasize that is, I think one of the ways that the world turns, particularly when you work for yourself, is about recommendation and sharing. And that is so important. And so when people, I seriously, I can still tell you to this day, the people who helped me 20, 30 or so years ago, and that will stick in my mind. And I don't always get a chance to do something for them, but when I meet someone that I believe I can help, you know, give them a contact, share something, tell somebody about what they're doing. I always take the opportunity to do so, because I think that is one of the things that makes the world turn. And so I'm always really appreciative when people go out of their way to put me forward for something, because I may have come across you guys in some other way, because the world works like that. But, it's one of those things that, the more people are out there sharing, when you come across people doing good work and you come across interesting things, I think that is the way that one of the things that really keeps our wonderful world turning. So, thank you to Anne. Thank you, all of you guys, for having me and inviting me. Thank you so much to everyone who's listened or watched. I hope you've had something useful from it. That will maybe give you a bit of food for thought, and maybe even inspire you to go forth and do something even more exciting than you're doing now.
Fantastic.
Indeed. And I will say, and she's a great, well, she's actually one of our ninja promoters. She, she does find us guests. She loves the show. She think, she's been on twice already. She's another Jedi. And I've got your lightsaber. She's an awesome lady. So thank you, Anne, for providing such a great guest. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the show. Just to wrap up very quickly, a little plug of our own stuff. If you haven't seen already, we are on Facebook on the Way of Conscious Mindfulness. You can find us on there. Also, we are setting up the ability to help fund the show. So the idea of moving the show forward, to build it up, to promote it more. So if you're interested in actually becoming a Patreon and funding the show only for $5 a month, and there's a few secret shows on there. There's a few things that we're sorting out, to additional things that you can get for being a Patreon. If you're interested in that, look at the links below. The links will be there very, very soon. I'm just finishing off the final touches. So that's my quick plug for the show. So I hope you enjoyed it. Next week we have apologies if I get your name slightly wrong, Laurel Denard, and we will be talking about releasing resistance to let you grow, and why presence and love is the ultimate state. So that will be next week's shows. So it is goodbye from the mighty Robbie. Hey! I knew you were going to do that. It's goodbye from the mighty Chris.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from the beautiful, the wonderful, the ever so lovely, the ever so knowledgeable Marilyn.
Goodbye, and thank you all.
And tally ho from me. So take care. Bye for now. Love, chi and chen, Sifu Boggie, and the Way of Conscious Mindfulness.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.